Well, thank you so much for that handoff. I'm excited to be here, and I've lived here in Austin for about 24 years now, heading into my 25th year. And I can tell you, I've seen what happens when a city keeps doubling in size, and we don't necessarily prepare for that. And the continued economic success of our region results in congestion. It's just part and parcel of what happens where more people live here and work here and need to get places. The reverse of that, where there's no traffic, also means no economic activity. So certainly we're in a tough bind as our region prepares to double in size. Now, before I get going, I just want to make sure first, if you can give me a thumbs up, that you can see my slides versus the other screen. Okay, great. Well, today we're going to be talking about first, what's movability? Who's this guy? What is TDM, which is an acronym, so we'll unpack that. Then we'll talk about the programming we offer, and then talk more about like why is transportation demand management important, and how does this impact equity in our region. And then we'll discuss a little bit of our emerging priorities before we open to Q&A. So let's get started. So first, Movability is the Transportation Management Association, or TMA, for the Central Texas region. And our focus is on reducing congestion and protecting air quality, which we've pretty much done with major employers and their employees. And more recently, we are starting to pivot to the public in general to encourage them to share their trips. We focus on transportation demand management, which is TDM, an industry term, and we do a variety of programs to encourage people to do that. And we also work with employers for their on-campus plans to make sure that they don't just do something like offer everyone a free parking spot, but then provide no support for any other mode to get to work other than driving alone. We also do data and research, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, and then educate our members about the different options that are out there, because sometimes they're not obvious, and they also are different in different parts of the region. So when you first just talking about transportation demand management, what does that include? Again, the boilerplate is we want to reduce congestion and increase the efficiency of our transportation network. It's important to recognize that even though the region is doubling in size, we're not going to double the number of roads. So the traffic is going to get worse. If you thought it was bad today, this was the best it's ever going to get for you. And so what we do is we try to increase general awareness of how can I share the trip? Because some people, you can get on a bus or a train, or maybe you're within biking or walking distance to, if not work or school, maybe to your pharmacy or maybe to the coffee shop where you don't have to drive. But for some people, the land and zoning use already requires a car. So can we get them to carpool? Can we get them to park and ride? Can we get them to share a ride with more than one person in a van pool? And part of that requires understanding how people make these decisions. We often do motivational interviewing to better understand why people are making these choices, and then in their own language, kind of walk them towards what does it look like if you were doing something different, if not all the time, then maybe one day a week. We also try to look at the built environment. That means, we will work with the city on some of their regulatory tools to help design the environment so that maybe there are, shade trees, maybe there's bike parking, maybe there are plug-in parking spots or other incentives on site that gently nudge people. And then again, we work with major employers since they are causing peak congestion during the morning and evening rush. So taking a look at what Movability does, there are a variety of programs that we'll talk about in just a sec, ranging from research to engagement events to appreciation events and even grant programs. So for our research initiatives, the thing that we're most known for is our annual commuter survey. We've just sent out a survey again this year. And to be clear, we don't do the survey. We outsource this to a third party. So that way we're not biasing the data. We also don't email about it or do social media about it because we know our members are going to take active trips. So if we send it to our people, the data will be manipulated in that way as well. Instead, it's a paper survey to 10,000 households, and then we find out what the average person is interested in, even though they can take the survey online if they like to. But during COVID, we were tracking commuter behavior as well as employer behavior during that time. And then we work from time to time on other initiatives on things like parking studies and other things that could be done a la carte. Oftentimes we're asked to do cluster analyses. So that way an employer can see where do my employees live and are some of them clustered together so that we can get them to do more group oriented travel. We also offer professional services, kind of like a consulting company. They range from doing survey work, putting together a TDM plan for an employer or for a building, a district. We host lunch and learns, or we'll take people out to learn by getting on the bus with us. We also do, tabling and general outreach, a little bit of speaking with public officials as well to influence policy. We, in addition to that, run a program called Get There Central Texas. This allows us to have a sub-network that's customized. So for example, there is currently a program called Commute Solutions that CAMPO, which is the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, hosts. This online platform allows you to plan your trips as well as track your trips in case your employer offers benefits if you make more active trips, or perhaps you're just interested. How much money am I saving? How many calories am I saving? How much carbon am I saving by doing this active trip? Well, we design custom subnetworks for that platform because, you going to UT might be comfortable carpooling or vanpooling with someone going to UT. Maybe you're not interested in carpooling or vanpooling with somebody who just generally works in downtown Austin. And so we'll create subnetworks for individual employers or neighborhoods or associations. And in addition to that, we offer a guaranteed ride home, thanks to support from Uber Transit, up to 7 times a year. If you're tracking your trips on our platform, then you qualify for 7 emergency ride homes a year. So if you hop in an Uber or a Lyft or whatever, or even a taxi, you can get a reimbursement up to $75. We host mobility camps, and this is, based on my experience with experiential learning. If you're in a STEM field and you want kids to grow up and be engineers, you don't show up with a PowerPoint. You show up with a robotics kit, or you make a video game, or you design a mobile app, and people learn as they go and become interested. It's the same with taking transit or biking. You get in a car all the time with your parents, or if you're from a smaller city, like most people in Austin are from smaller cities in Texas, you don't have a lot of experiences with transit. Versus if you grow up in a transit rich area, you might think, when you think of transit, you might think of, I'm visiting my grandma, I'm going to see a show, I'm going to go to the circus, we're going to get dinner tonight. And so it's this second nature. Well, when you live in a community like ours, you gotta create those positive experiences. So instead of hosting a lunch and learn, we'll take people out to lunch and learn. And so we focus on major employers, seniors, and college freshmen, and we'll take them on off-campus trips for free. We've gone to coffee shops, the Central Library, South Congress for a scavenger hunt, any putt mini golf, whatever it is that motivates people to join on the group. And the goal is to get them comfortable using alternative modes so that they might use it to go to work or for entertainment. We have a program called Move Pass. This allows employers to purchase in bulk through Cap Metro's um, bulk discount purchasing program. And to make a long story short, they only accept cash or credit card. And a lot of employers, they need to do something like billing, and they can't. So as a result, we make the purchase for them, and then they reimburse us for that purchase and for time. And it allows more companies to do that. In addition, we've partnered up with Google and Bank of America to make this program affordable for nonprofits and small businesses as well, since there's administrative time involved. Our next one is Go Grants. We pass $60,000 worth of grants for either infrastructure projects, programmatic support, or maybe a planning project of some kind. And we do gifts of up to $7,500 at a time. This grant program has grown very quickly. And so, for example, this year, just this fall, we had $30,000 available to give, but we had $150,000 worth of requests. So we're going to be greatly expanding that program over the next few years. And by and large, most people wind up contacting us because they're looking for new bike racks, transit passes. Sometimes they need help planning. How can I encourage employees to stop driving alone? Maybe they started charging for parking and they need to put their program in place. And we help them get that work done. We also help our members get recognized nationally. There's a program called Best Commuter Workplaces for Commuters. And as a member, we can help you prepare your application and we can get the fee waived. Now, this seems like a small thing, but when you're in corporate America, you want recognition and you want trophies in your case. And so, believe it or not, there is a lot of competition to be recognized, and we're just helping make it easier for them to do it so that they don't skip out on it. But more importantly, you don't just win this thing by doing nothing. You gotta also have the policies in place. So for some employers, they come to us and they want to apply, and then we point out, you could earn a little bit more points if you did X, Y, and Z. So it's an opportunity to speak even with companies that are already doing good work to try to improve some of their programs. And then we have a quarterly Pachakacha program. Pachakacha means chit chat. It's a Japanese term, and it is a fast pitch series for for PowerPoint. So you get 20 slides and 20 seconds per slide. And we allow members, vendors, funders, and other interested audiences to come in. And this way, in a breakfast, 2-hour setting, you can hear 5 or 6 pitches instead of inviting 1 or 2 people to talk for 10 minutes and you're like pulling them off the stage because they won't stop talking. And we found this to be very successful. It allows members who maybe don't have the funding to be a sponsor to still get in front of our membership and let people know about the work that they're doing. And then our signature events, we do a breakfast in February every year, and then we just hosted our summit this past October. We'll be doing that again in the future. And this is really a convening of everybody in this space. Usually there are about 200 people at each of these events. And this last one focused on our construction partnership program, which I'll talk about in just a moment. All right, so now you know what we're doing. Why are we doing this? Why is TDM important? Well, first, Austin is one of the most congested cities in America. We're adding 70 more cars to the road every day because about 150 more people are moving here every day. And again, we're not building more road space. So, you got to think about this as a geometry problem. How do I fit 70 more people on the road? And so if you take a look, you can see on the left, there's 70 people in a bus. And then you can see in the middle, 70 people and 70 people on bikes. And the last frame, you can see 70 people, but if you count it up, you'll notice that's like 30-ish cars. It would take twice as much road space to get 70 people on that road. Now, here's the thing. During rush hour, the bus probably doesn't have 70 people on it, but it might have 30 people on it. So really what you're seeing on the right, every time a bus goes by, this many cars are being taken off the road. And so what we're asking people to do is find opportunities to use the bus or train or use a bike for some trips. It doesn't have to be every trip. I mean, if you're commuting to school 5 days a week by car and 1 day a week you take yourself out, that's a 20% reduction in your contribution to the traffic. And that's what we're looking for, is that incremental change once or twice a week. And one of my favorite things to mention is, you're really not stuck in traffic. You are traffic. So if you don't take yourself out of it, then it's just going to keep getting worse. In the Austin area, the average commute is about 16 miles. So if you were to leave your car home just twice a week and you look at, here's the federal reimbursement rate, 65.5 cents a mile. That's $21 each day you make that decision. That's adds up to about $2,000 a year, just twice a week, not using it to go to work or school. That's it. $2,000 a year in savings. Now that adds up really quickly. If you were to do that all week long, you would pay for your undergraduate education very quickly. So while you're a student, if you were there for 4 years, 5 years, you will fully have paid for the cost of tuition over that time. In addition, parking is really expensive. This slide is a little out of date because parking costs $200 a month, but really we're starting to hear $300, $325 per spot per month. So a lot of employers work with us because that is a fixed cost and they're giving it away for free to employees, even though it keeps increasing each year. So instead, we encourage them to do a parking cash out where they say, all right, the parking spot costs $350. How about I give you a commuter credit of $350 and you use it however you want to use it. You could buy a parking spot, but then next year it's going to go up. You could do some in and outs and then get a bus pass or a B-cycle or use Uber. And this has been pretty successful. All the employers that start to charge for parking find that employees respond in kind. There's also the factor of time. We're wasting 53 hours every year stuck in traffic. And I don't mean like regular traffic. I mean just that peak commuting traffic, 53 hours, which has already increased 15 hours since 2012, just reinforcing it's going to keep getting worse. And that results in about $1 billion in lost productivity every year, just people stuck in traffic instead of maybe on their laptop working on the way to and from work. And so it made me think, what could I do with 53 hours of time? I could review every band that played South by Southwest. And just to be clear, not just listen, because I could listen to every band in the car, but I could actually write reviews in that amount of time, 53 hours. I could catch up on email. That's something that people do a lot on the train and on the bus on the way to work. In fact, some employers count that travel time as part of the workday, so long as you're logged in and getting going. You could watch a movie or TV, certainly something you shouldn't be doing while you're driving. And on top of it, it impacts air quality. Each one of us is responsible for putting 22 tons of CO2 in the air every year from just transportation, just our work commute. And so if you think about what I was saying about like taking yourself out every now and then, if you were to commute twice a week without a car, that's a 10% reduction in your emissions. And if you were to decide, okay, just for work or school, I'm going to use public transit, I'm not going, or I'm going to bike and I'm not going to drive, then that would be a 25% reduction in your overall emissions. Just something to keep in mind as this becomes more and more important to us. And then finally, it really is freedom for a lot of people. Here on this photo, I've got teenagers. Certainly it's nice to be able to get around without being dependent on your parents. Certainly parents are happy that they don't have as much carpooling to do. And then seniors are also a growing part of this equation because oftentimes Seniors will avoid going places at night because they've lost their night vision. And so we'll host trips to go to see shows at the Paramount or at Bass Concert Hall, knowing that we can get on the 7 or the 10 or the 20 and get them back home without them having to drive. But there's also the goal of the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan. In 2019, they found that 3 out of 4 people were driving alone to work. And the goal by 2039 is for there to be a 50-50 mode split. In order for that to happen, we have to increase other active modes. And you can see we're hoping for a significant increase in that in the transit number from 4% to 16%. And also, we're way ahead of schedule on telework. I can tell you that we're way beyond 14%. We may even be at 25 or 30% by now. All right, so last thing I want to talk about, and very briefly, is about how equity issues impact transportation service. And so when we're talking about equity in this context, I'm talking about access. No matter where you live in the region, you need access to an affordable place to live. You need access to the transportation network itself, businesses, shops, restaurants, or social services, maybe a medical office, for example, or childcare. And we did a public engagement process for this called Connections 2025, and it became CAP Remap, if you've heard this, in 2018, where CAP Metro realigned its bus network. On this image, you can see 2 examples, one that has less frequent service, but wider service area, and then another where they shrunk the service area, but everything that was running more frequently. And so the red lines on here are every 15-minute service versus the green lines being 30 or 60-minute service. And you can see they went from a lower frequency to a higher frequency network. But again, they shrunk the map a little. So if you got on the system, it was better. But if you were far on the outskirts, you kind of lost some of your rides. And the reason we did this as a community is because we asked everyone, what do you think? And people by and large said they wanted more frequency and that they were willing to do it even if it meant that they had to walk further distances, particularly if it was more frequent and it ran all day and all week, including on the weekend. And so that's what the current service was designed to do, was add frequency 7 days a week. But then you have this issue of our land use. I mean, welcome to suburbia. In this scenario, let's say that's the bus stop, right here. And you live here, so you're just going to walk to the bus stop, no problem at all. And I'm going to run a bus on this straight line every 15 minutes, super easy, no stops, no sudden left-hand turns or anything. Now, here is my next door neighbor. I can literally talk over the fence, but for this person, their commute to this bus stop is this. So this is not an equitable situation because you can't properly serve this neighborhood. And oftentimes the transit authority is in the position of taking the bus and then moving it here through the neighborhood so that it provides more equitable service. But when you do that, when you provide more coverage, you can't afford to run it as frequently. So then fewer people take the bus because it doesn't come quickly enough. I mean, it doesn't matter if you have a Maserati in your parking lot. If there's a gate at the end of your driveway that only opens once every 60 minutes, you're not gonna use that Maserati versus having a Ford Focus with no gate at the end of the driveway and you could take it out anytime you want. And so we come up with this problem where the more we build in this form, the less service we can provide. And that was fine at one point, but now it's really becoming a problem because of how spread out our region is becoming. And I don't have to have time to go into detail, but needless to say, suburban sprawl costs more than urban form because you have to extend new services much further out. So, new hospitals, new police substations, new schools, new water lines, power lines, new roads, and all of these things don't actually pay for themselves. It's easier to pay for service when there are more people contributing. So the taller you get, the more coverage you can have for the fee for that service versus the lower one-story construction doesn't really pay for all of the needs in that area. But the real problem is that previously we had a white flight problem where wealthy people were leaving the city center. And now people are leaving the city center because they can't afford it. So the people who most need help are finding that they're priced out of the city and then lose access. So you travel outside the city and now you have to buy a car. So that's a $10,000 a year expense. And if you could afford to live in the city, you wouldn't have it. And so for every dollar that you save moving out, you're actually consuming another 70 cents in transportation costs. And this is being experienced nationwide. And the last thing I'll say before we open to questions is that people think that they need to be able to get everywhere in the city of Austin in 15 minutes, which is ridiculous. And let me just prove this to you. Now, we all know that South Park Meadows all the way up to the Domain isn't even how big the city is. Like I could go much further north and further south, but those are places we know exist. That's 22 miles away from one another. Okay. And just for context, that's basically Virginia Beach to Norfolk or Raleigh to Durham. It's just barely the difference between Denver and Boulder. And if you go to Denver and you want to go out to Boulder, there's a bus and it'll take you an hour to do that trip. But people want a 15-minute service between the Domain and South Park. And the problem is we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's going to get less and less possible for us to provide that service unless we shift the growth pattern up instead of out. All right, so with that, I'm just going to say that we've talked about most of the things here. I will say that our organization will be working with all of the governmental entities that are about to do construction in this region. I-35, the airport, the convention center, the light rail, 6th Street, they're all going to be under construction at the same time. And we need to do outreach to people to help them shift, whether it's from one street to another or to a different mode. We're also working with the city to make sure we're enforcing TDM, which we currently have not. So I'll just skip there and I can skip our event just to get to the end and open it up to questions. I'd happily talk for an hour if you let me, but I think I've overstayed my welcome.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
It may not be a question, but that could be a comment. So I just wondering, could you hear me correctly?
Yep. Sound great.
So it's another question, but a comment. So first, thank you so much for this fabulous presentation. Actually, I'm Yev Chen, and currently I'm doing some things about how we are going to quantify the trade-off between the housing and transportation costs. And your research do give me a really good insight saying that maybe this kind of things that should be important in my final dissertation. So I will say thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't have that exact question, but I just want to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad that folks like you are looking into this as well.
Any other questions from the audience?
So I just wanted to say I've heard about movability for a long time. And I didn't ever really kind of understand the scope and the breadth of what you guys did. Would you be able to share a little bit about like how your organization actually formed? Because I feel like this is a pretty niche thing. I haven't really heard of any sort of equivalent, in other cities or anything like that.
Yeah, so TMAs are rare, but they are around the country, and they tend to be very focused in a specific district. And so we got started as a project of the Downtown Austin Alliance, and they found that the downtown employers were struggling with traffic and with the cost of parking. And so we were helping them in that capacity to put policies in place to reduce their dependence on parking and increase active commuting. The city appreciated that, and they started the Mayor's Mobility Breakfast, which is now the Movability Breakfast, and that brought thought leadership together. And then when companies come to the region, large firms, they are told that they have to join the TMA. because they have to talk to us about commuting. And then finally, the city put in place TDM rules in zoning so that you can get a discount on your street impact fee, or traditionally you can reduce your parking requirement if you include TDM. And that was, again, another reason why they would come and consult with us. At this point, the city provides about half of our annual funding, and then our members and sponsors provide the rest, with a little bit coming from some, fee for service for some of our planning work. I'm hoping to expand that pie, and I'm also hoping to move our organization from being member serving with a 501c6 designation to a community focused organization 501c3 designation. And so we'll see if that also changes our funding pool at that point. But again, to your point, most cities would have a downtown TMA and a domain TMA and a Mueller TMA, and instead we're the TMA for the region. And so we're excited about that. We're unusual in that way, but also we'll be taking some time to focus in different areas because some areas have different demands than others.
Cool, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, I think we can have one last questions from the audience.
I have a question. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the interesting topics. And my question is, like, if you want to make some service in different communities, are there any methods for you to estimate their demands, or like you have any kind of data size for you to support your deployment strategies? Yeah, that is my question. Thank you.
So typically we work through survey and reporting. So, we may, for example, we're working with a chamber right now in a small city. We start by surveying their members as well as their employees, finding out what are they currently doing, what are they currently having trouble with. And then we try to get them to report their trips through My Commute Solutions, which is part of Get There. We try to do that by giving incentives. So for the city of Austin, for example, you can earn time off as you use an active mode. So you have a vested interest in reporting every time you bike or every time you carpool because you earn leave. For other folks, we'll do things like an electric bike giveaway or HEB gift cards just to keep people reporting their data. So we're looking at reported data and reported data over time versus using, like I was formerly an LBJ student. I would love to just go and grab data and say, here you go. The only way we can do that is with our partnership with Campo, and they're looking at overarching data. We can look at that. But in general, for us, the proof is in the pudding. We ask you before, during, and after, and we're hoping to see that change with just that part of the population versus trying to say something about your company by looking at regional data.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Stern, for your wonderful talk. And I think we are good to go. Yeah.